Hello and welcome back to Pillocks Maternity. Last time we were discussing whether or not Pyrion would want to have sex with a robot, because apparently that's going to happen like next year. And what I think having sex, okay, is a very kind of it's only one part of a relationship.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like I don't think it's that much different to just watching porn. Do you know what I mean? Or using like a fleshlight or something like that. Do you know what I mean? It's not.
Are you saying that? I mean, that here's the thing, right?
Go on.
If sex is just a mechanical thing that you do, and it's like no big deal, then of course having sex with a robot is just another thing to have sex with. But I feel like most people either do or should put some kind of emotional content into the people that they have sex with. It should mean something. Obviously, not all sex is going to mean something to everybody, but I think it probably should. I think it's kind of a waste otherwise. So if you're having sex with a robot that looks like a person and talk, I mean, she's got her boobs out like right now. This is clearly a murderous sex robot, right? So
it is a murderous sex robot. You're right.
But so my point is this, right? If you make a robot that looks like a person, feels like a person, and you have sex with it like a person, are most people just going to go, it's just a robot, and ignore it? Or are they going to fall in love with that sex robot? And what happens then if, like, it crashes? Are they going to mourn for the loss of their sex robot? Are they going to fall in love with this robot? And
I think it's more complicated than that. I don't
know. People are pretty simple. I think people fall in love with all kinds of things.
I don't think they fall in love with all kinds of things. I think they get crushes on all kinds of things. Especially the things they can't have. Bear that in mind.
Maybe. So you'd covet the robot. It would not return any affection to you that it wasn't programmed to do. I love you. I am programmed to love you too. Well, it's not quite as affectionate as I would like.
Maybe it would say, I am programmed not to. I do not love you. Maybe it would tell you it doesn't love you.
Yeah, this is a one-time thing.
I just want to get my rocks off.
But I paid £10,000 for you.
Yeah. But I love you. No, you don't. It is merely a
chemical
reaction in your brain
human
temporarily. Also, what if all the sex robots were the same? I think that there is a certain element of wonder and joy and happiness in imperfection. I think that sometimes it is the things that are not perfect that are attractive too, right? I think what I'm saying is that if someone is robotically perfect, isn't that a bit weird?
Yeah.
Or not?
I guess.
I don't know. I don't know what I'm really saying here. I guess I'm saying that if all the sex robots are the same, then there's not much variety there, is there? Either. It's
true. You'd want to personalize it, wouldn't you?
Not that you have that many partners, but how many partners have you had by the time? I'm not asking you for your number actually.
Right.
But what's the average number of partners people have by the time they're like a certain age?
Well, what kind of age and what kind of demographic are we talking about? I mean, I think younger.
Well, I don't know, but
here's the thing. I think. I've started to realise that if you think a thing is true just on guesswork, it's almost certainly the opposite of what you think is true. So I know
that's true.
In my opinion...
But hang on, by that logic, it's not true. Hello?
Ah, you're right.
I'm sorry.
But that logic of yours only works if in fact it is true. It's a paradox. Anyway.
It is a paradox.
So let's say I'm like,
say you're
I'm young Barry, strapping young lad, right?
Yeah, you're Barry.
What is he, 20, 21?
Yeah, 20.
Hot as hell.
20-year-old hot as hell.
Lithe and beautiful Barry. Lovely, supple Barry.
Virgin.
How many girls am I going to have had sex with by that point? Bearing in mind...
None.
Why are you painting Barry as some kind of beautiful virgin?
He's so pure and he's not being deflowered by any horrid, evil women taking advantage of him. He's a pure...
But I think, like, if we were...
Isn't there a bit of a double standard, though, there as well? There's a massive double standard there, actually, isn't there?
Where?
In that. Well, between, women being prized for their virginity and men being mocked for it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's a historical thing, isn't it? It's a hang-up we've got from a time when men wanted to carry on their family line.
I don't see anyone trying to do anything about changing it.
I actually see quite a lot of people trying to do something about changing it.
Do they?
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of talk about it. Certainly in the sort of, liberal, high-minded press, there's lots of talk about it. I don't think people's attitudes are going to change anytime soon.
No, it takes generations for attitudes to change.
Yeah, exactly. All these things take time. I feel like a lot of this stuff, if you think about the progress that we've made towards rights for minority groups and gay people and that whole community, I mean, if you think about in the 60s, you could still go to jail for that kind of stuff. And that was my mum's youth.
In most of the world, you still can. Well, not most
exactly.
of the world, but many parts
and
of the world.
A lot of the world is straight up illegal. So the progress is going to be painfully slow. And I think it's sad for people who are, part of the LGBTQ community. I'm definitely going to get one of those letters wrong at some point in my life, and it's going to be embarrassing. But anyway,
you just have to keep adding extra letters.
Just add a few
on
more
there.
letters. I'll just let's call them the alphabet community. That way we can chuck whatever letters we want in there. Anyway, so that community of people.
Oh my god.
I think if you think about it, if you're living now, understandably you want things to be better for you now. It's not good enough to say, oh, it'll just take a few generations. It's like, well, what about me? It's like if you said to me, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to be disenfranchised and kind of disaffected and pissed off for your generation. But don't worry, because after you're dead, things will be a lot better. It's like, that's not the way things work. People want it to be better for them in their life and in their current situation. So if you're talking about the fact that women being virgins is still a big thing, maybe it's not for like a younger generation. I'm 40. So, I've grown up in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, a time when women having sex before marriage was no big deal. But in the 50s and 60s, if you met a woman and she'd had sex with like 20 guys, you probably wouldn't marry her. Attitudes were very different, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's already been some change there. It just sucks for people that have to live through that change period rather than end up in the period when things have changed.
I think a lot of people who have had to live through some thing are like, for example, I think the people who had to live through marijuana being illegal.
Oh my God,
I just blew up my entire team with a fucking trap.
Oh,
Jesus Christ. Are kind of those people who've had to live through stuff being illegal would be very kind of jealous almost that now it's illegal, and they're like, well, why should they get it when we didn't?
Yeah, maybe.
I think the older generation can sometimes be quite, I don't know.
Selfish?
Yeah, a little bit, maybe.
Bitter?
Or a little bit jealous. Bitter
Yeah.
is the word I was looking for. But maybe not. Maybe their attitude is more that it was okay for us. We had a great, we had it great back then. I get the impression that these days we're sold this kind of doom and gloom. Doom and gloom sells, right? It's like BuzzFeedy stuff. Like
Right.
bad news sells. I saw a tweet the other day from the Sun, and it was like a picture of a meteor like crashing into the Earth. It's like, is the Earth going to end? It's like, how fucking ridiculous does it get? How BuzzFeedy do these scaremongery do these sensationally comments get? And I don't know if it used to be this bad in the previous generations.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I mean, the things that sell, sex and doom and gloom.
It's got to have been scary.
And other people's failure always sells. Think how many movies there are where...
Everyone loves to see the mighty fall.
Yeah.
Celebs without makeup.
The Earth is everyone, therefore everyone falls.
Exactly. Everyone loves to see the Earth fall over on a banana skin and just laugh at it.
Think how many movies are about saving the world, right? It's always about the doom and gloom of the Earth and everything like that. And I think there could be a lot more movies made where Earth just doesn't get saved. And I think that's what the whole zombie apocalypse thing, that whole point was, people are kind of, maybe they're miserable with the way the world works and they're pretty fed up with it, and they're thinking, fuck it, let's just have a zombie apocalypse, billions of people die and only a few people get to scrape together and shoot stuff and live out of cans of beans for the rest of their life. And I kind of feel like that more modern take on the apocalypse of, no, it did happen, it wasn't stopped, and now we have to deal with it. I kind of feel like that speaks volumes about the way people think about the way the world's going. In the past, movies were just like, this meteor is threatening the Earth, these Martians are going to invade, and they're stopped. Whereas now there's a ton of movies where it's literally the apocalypse happened and we didn't stop it and we couldn't do anything about it. I think it came about from people's fear of nuclear war in the 80s.
Well, that was a genuine fear, the Cold War, and
It was fucking terrifying.
people lived through it. Did you? Well, I mean, did you? I guess you were a kid.
I was a real person
when
back
it was
then.
sort of ending, though. When were you born?
1976.
Right. So, how old were you when people were really at the height of their Cold War
I mean,
fear?
the 80s was a pretty scary time because, I mean, for instance, I was living in America at the time. Crime was really bad in this. I mean, for instance, take New York City, which is now so much better than it was. In the 80s, there were huge parts of New York you just didn't go to. As a white guy, in a middle class neighborhood, the Bronx was entirely out of bounds. Parts of Manhattan, like Williamsburg and everything, was super rough, and it was not a nice sort of safe place. Crack was a thing then. All of a sudden, crack was everywhere. AIDS came out in the 80s. They brought that out in the 80s, and then you had all that fear about gay people. Only gay people can get it, and you can get it from kissing. You can get it from a toilet seat. It was just this ill-informed and awful period, and also. There was still the Cold War. Like, there really was still the Cold War. I remember growing up in New York as a kid, walking around. There were nuclear fallout shelters in New York. Like, there's a little sign that's got the nuclear symbol. That's the fallout shelter for your block. So it was like a daily reminder that we were essentially at war. It just hadn't happened yet. It was a Cold War. It was still a war. There was every bad guy in every movie was Russian. Every single one. Everyone that Arnie fought or that it was in a baddie in a movie was Russian, apart from Back to the Future where it was the Libyans, of course. But it was a scary time. Nuclear war was definitely there, and a real threat. And lots of movies came out about it, like war games and stuff. Nuclear war and everything like that. There were a ton of movies made in the 60s and 70s about nuclear war, and it was a scary time. People really thought it was going to happen.
I mean, I watched Star Trek: The Voyage Home the other day.
Right.
Which is the 86 film where they have to...
The whales, right?
Star Trek 4.
Yeah.
It's the one where basically a probe turns up at Earth and is like, going to destroy Earth. Okay, Earth is going to be destroyed. It starts bombing Earth. It's like making all these crazy noises. They can't decipher it. Anyway, like someone has the idea to put it through a filter as if it was in water, and it's like the whale song. So they're like, oh my god, they must be trying to contact the whales, right?
Yeah.
Spock makes this leap, and so he's like, we're gonna have to go back in time because the whales went extinct. We're gonna have to go back in time and get some whales and bring them back to the future, right? 2 whales. Now there's a little bit of a problem with that in a way because. Well, there's a lot of problems with it. But the film itself is not actually a bad film because it doesn't really take itself too seriously.
No,
they go
it
back in
doesn't,
time to 80s, San Francisco.
Yeah,
and
Spock wears that headband to cover his Vulcan ears.
It's a great... I mean, I don't want to say it's a great film. It's a film. And it's worth watching because, I don't know, it just doesn't take itself seriously at all, actually. It's just they're clearly just having a lot of fun in San Francisco. They obviously filmed it over the course of the summer. And I recognised a lot of the sites because I'd obviously been to San Francisco a couple of times. And they actually shot quite a lot of it on this aircraft carrier, right? Now,
Yeah.
that's one of the bits which ties into what you were just saying about was Chekhov. There's a scene where Chekhov, who's the Russian, is asking, cops on the street, where are the nuclear vessels?
Yeah.
The nuclear vessels in his Russian accent. I can't do it, but it's great. It's a great scene because it's kind of at the height of not at the height of the Cold War. The Cold War's past, but it's still very relevant in people's minds as this.
Yeah.
Associating the Russian accent. That's why the joke sort of works, and even today it still works. In a sort of sense, but. If you put it into the context of the time period, it's really different. There's these great moments, where Spock and Kirk swear at people on the street, because they've learned that that's how, to get things done. And there's this punk with a boombox on the bus. It's really 80s. With this sort of leather jacket and orange hair and nose ring and chewing gum at them. There's just. I don't know. It felt like a really good watch. I really enjoyed watching it actually, and so
it's a funny movie.
Man, so films and Apocalypse. There is a sort of urgency in current films, at least, to make everything about the end of the world. Certainly any blockbuster, the world has to be at stake in some way. it can't just be, just it can't just be a story about people and a family or whatever. It always has to be this bigger thing, like something's going to happen that triggers the whole destruction of the world.
Yeah.
Or, and they have to stop it. And so in a way, like shoehorning that world destruction in.
I knew you were going to do that.
I couldn't fucking help it. It's so tedious running past that factory. Like, God damn it. Anyway, it wasn't a bad one. It was just a petrification trap.
Yeah, just petrified. We were all right.
So actually, I'm done in this dungeon now.
Oh, sweet.
So we're almost out. We've talked around in circles a lot. So maybe we'll have to just try and flip back onto some of the other topics.
Yeah, we touched on some topics and then been distracted as usual by Star Trek. It happens.
We started off by talking about Barry and
Supple Barry. So my point was this, right?
Whether or not it's okay for an 18-year-old to have sex with robots,
right? But
instead of women.
So let's go back to Barry, a lovely, supple, beautiful young Barry, right? So if Barry and all his peers, if for them girls having sex is no big deal, then that's going to be the way they grow up. Like he's not. When I speak to a lot of young people at events and stuff like that, and they're all pretty chilled out. I mean, they're not. So there is some people have got some bias and stuff. But I remember when I was younger, there was a lot more bigotry and a lot more.
Oh no, I'm not saying girls having
judgmentalness.
sex is a big deal. I think that girls have probably more sex than guys do.
Right, but do they? Do they? That's my question. And how is that even possible, Lewis?
I think that there's this. I think that there's this thing where it's a different sort of relationship, isn't it? It's men want sex and women kind of, I guess they do want sex as well, but they tend to be more choosy. It's easy for women to get it. Easier for women to get it, I think, than it is for men.
I think so.
Do you think that's the case?
No, yeah, I think so. I think it's easy to suggest that that's not the case, but it's certainly the case that
I think it's easy. I
don't know. Maybe it's a stereotype to assume that men are always up for it, and if a woman says, "Hey, let's have sex," they're just going to jump at the chance. But the point is, if a man finds a woman attractive and she says, "Let's have sex," I think it would be much easier for him to be convinced that yes, this is a really good idea. We should do this right away. Whereas I think women, because of what we were talking about with regards to them, they don't want to appear to be giving it up too easy because then society's going to brand them as a slag. Like if a dude goes into a bar and there's mainly girls in there and he's wearing like his sexiest clothes and just sits at the bar, how many women are just going to come up and try and sort of seduce him? You know what I mean? Whereas I think if a good-looking woman goes into a bar and sits there wearing her sexiest clothes, you guarantee a dude's going to make a play, right? To try and talk her into
again,
it.
there's that old double standard there. There's always still that. Well, there's still that problem there of men being.
It's expected, like, and also it's
men
seen
being
as
encouraged
acceptable.
to have a lot.
Yeah, it's encouraged.
Yeah.
So it's seen as like, oh, look at this guy, how brave, sort of thing. Because of course she can reject him, and it's like. It was her decision, and he gets rejected.
I get the impression that a smaller...
He's putting himself out there, Lewis.
Just through the way it's done, though, that guy, I think proportionally... Oh, my God, someone's trapped in an iceberg.
No, it's that rock. Help me, I'm a rock. Oh, no, they are trapped down there.
Someone's trapped down a hole. Oh, my God, I have to tie a rope around someone's waist. Who's going down?
Send Mrs. Flax down. You've already sent her to the front of the line a few times. She'll be fine.
Okay.
Who's the lightest? We'll find out in a minute when you've decided. You're Googling this. I know you're going to send my wife, you piece of shit! How dare you!
I wasn't sure what to do. So anyway, she goes down with the rope, and she can... So... There's a small ledge. She can either jump down or climb down. Now, she's obviously got the rope around her, so I set her down, jumping with the old athletics. Her athletics is fine. So she gets down there, no problem. Almost directly below is the trapped villager. We're gonna have a look around quickly, and then we're gonna probably rappel down to grab him. Maybe? Yes?
Go on, Lewis.
Maybe?
Go on, you can do it.
Come on, Mrs. Flax. You can do it. She rappels down, grabs hold of the rope, The villager gets covered in shards of ice, but he's there. Now, if only I had like a spell. But look, as Mrs. Flax struggles free of the hole, the wind begins to pick up. Should I take shelter or press on? I'm going to press on because I've got high constitution. It's no problem for me. Mrs. Flax can handle a bit of light snowage, a little bit of rain. And up they go. Now here it says pick up the pace or call out for help or use one hand. I mean, one hand. Just trying to climb a rope with one hand is just a fucking death trap.
That's tricky.
Right?
Yeah.
Calling out for help. They could yank on the rope, sure, but do you know what? She could do it on her own. Just pick up the pace.
Oh, wow.
Come on, Mrs. Flax.
You can do it.
You can do it. There you go. Swift progress. Up to the top.
Wow.
Job done.
What a hero.
Gentleman rescued. What a lady. We get $300 and he's back off to town.
She's a hell of a woman.
Is the end of Pillars of Eternity Pillocks today. Thank you for watching, everyone. We will see if we can pick up some of these conversation threads next time as we very delicately pick our way through a very thorny
minefield.
See you there.